what I wish parents knew. And I am excited to introduce to you these 4 panelists. All of them have experience working with young people and have picked up some insights that they're hoping to share boldly with you tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to the panelists.
Thanks, Sarah. So my name is Kotopka, and I first want to thank Joseph and Chelsea, wherever they are, for the invitation to be with you here tonight. It's always an honor to be asked to speak at things like this, but it comes with a big dose of humility because I'm very aware of my own limitations. And as I look out in the group and I see so many people that I recognize and I know how amazing you all are, you wouldn't be here if you didn't care about the education your kids are getting and about the experience that they're having in the hallways and the classrooms here at St. Joseph. So I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. And I also want to thank you for sending your kids to a Catholic school. Just a brief introduction. My husband Mike and I have raised 7 kids. We have 6 sons and a daughter. They all graduated from St. Teresa's School and Pius X High School. 4 of the boys are married, 2 of the kids are single, and our youngest Charlie is finishing the probedeutic stage at the seminary. Did I get it? Good enough? It took me about this whole year to learn how to pronounce it, so I was going to go for it. We also have 6 grandkids and our 7th on the way in May. Excuse me, I'm just getting over influenza. I'm not contagious, but I have a little. Let's see, outside of raising kids, I also had a nice opportunity to be able to use my education degree and just a general love of teaching throughout the years. All of those kind of things would be maybe considered extracurricular academic activities for the kids in our schools. Coached math counts for 15 years. I believe you have a math counts program here. I can't recommend it highly enough. Like, math counts is just a really wonderful program. 20 years ago, along with a good friend from St. Teresa, some of you will know Lori Beals, we started the Page 1 program, and I still run the Page 1 program, and I got to meet some of your sweet kids at the Fun Day. I hope they had fun at Fun Day. And then 16 years ago, with another good friend, Margaret Kaiser Woodward, started the academic decathlon program at Pius, and was really involved with it for the first 15 years. And this past year had to step away for reasons that might become obvious by the end of tonight's talk. Could not really be involved this year with academic decathlon because maybe some things that we'll talk about tonight, but I'll keep my remarks brief, even though I had written some. Basically wanted to share that, what we do as parents is a marathon, where this is a long thing that we're doing. It's lifelong, and that sometimes life gets kind of messy. And life got kind of messy in a couple ways for my family last year, and so I've been at home a lot. But that's good.
Yeah, thank you, Anne.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Father Ben Holdren, and it's really fun being with all of you this evening. My full-time job is being out at the seminary at St. Gregory the Great Seminary, and I direct the propedeutic program. And so I have Anne's Charlie, who gives me a run for my money in the best ways. Yeah, he's wonderful. But yeah, it's good this evening to be with all of you, and being at the seminary, remembering that there are women in this world. We're around guys all day, every day, but yeah, just a little bit about me. I was ordained in 2007, and I was at St. Patrick's for 1 year, and began teaching at Pius at that time, and then got moved to the Newman Center. And I was at Newman for 7 years, working with college students. See a lot of familiar faces of students that were there when I was an assistant, and did a lot of spiritual direction for young people at that time. And then the bishop let me know he was moving me to Bellwood, which is up near David City. And so I taught at Aquinas for 8 years and was a chaplain of the school there. And during the time I was at Bellwood, I got a call from Chance and Laura Unger, who wanted to start some formation for married couples. And so we started Missionaries of the Holy Spirit in the Family. Then after being in Bellwood for 8 years, the bishop moved me to the seminary. And I'll get to share a little bit about the Propedutic program with all of you, and just the beauty of the church's vision to really form young people and to help them become gifts to others. And so, yeah, I'll just hold off for the rest until the questions, but yeah, wonderful to be with all of you.
Hello, my name is Ashley Montag, and I am a parishioner here at St. Joe's. I've been a parishioner here for the last 4 years. I'm originally from Arizona, so I'm not a Lincoln, Nebraska native, but I moved here 12 years ago and I've stayed, so I think that kind of earns me some street cred. I love winter, which is also kind of an unpopular opinion, but it's great in Nebraska. I moved here originally because I worked as a Catholic missionary with Focus. My background in my undergrad was actually in education, so I have a real soft spot for teachers and parents and schools, so it was an honor to be able to be invited here. I feel like I have to apologize because I am a stand-in for Dr. Peter Martin, so I'm sorry you don't get to listen to him, but yeah, I was very honored to be able to be asked to be here. And after my work as a Catholic missionary with Focus, I ended up going to graduate school at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln to pursue a degree in marriage and family therapy. Through my work as a missionary, I got really passionate about walking with college students, and I realized I needed more training in order to be able to support them and their families and everyone in their lives in the ways that I desired. And so I went back to school, got my degree in marriage and family therapy, and right after I graduated, I started my own private practice with my business partner, Katie Bardsley, and that was 4.5 years ago. So we have a practice here in Lincoln that serves individuals, couples, families. We have a play therapist who works with kids and families, and it's an honor to be able to work in this field. I don't know exactly what I'll be able to share with you other than I think my heart for parents is to encourage you and to really say that you are what your kids need. And I know that that gets really hard to believe sometimes when you hit these stuck places, but if that's the only thing you remember me saying the whole night, I really hope that that sticks, that in my work with families, I am more and more convinced that parents are exactly what their kids need. And so I want that encouragement to sink as deeply as it possibly can.
Hello, I'm Jake Cortright. I'm from Omaha. Don't hold that against me though. I am originally from Kansas City, so not a native Nebraska. I'm in from Omaha. I teach junior high. I'm in my 8th year teaching junior high. Mrs. Daniel brought me, so blame her if anything goes wrong. Let's see my background. I am not a traditionally trained educator. I started teaching 8 years ago, kind of like on a fluke. Somebody was getting married and moving to Ireland and needed someone to take their job, so they got a hold of me. My background is in theology and philosophy. I studied both at Benedictine College, where I met my beautiful wife, who is from Nebraska, and we ended up here. I kept teaching. I got my teaching certification through the University of Nebraska-Kearney, and just finished my master's degree in philosophy this last summer. So I also have 5 children. That's more exciting. I have 5 children, range from 9, almost 10, all the way down to 2 months. They are all homeschooled by my lovely wife, and yeah, I'm just glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much. We are going to field questions for our panel by having you text this number up on the screen, and then I will receive those and be able to relay them to the panelists. So I guess I should kind of introduce myself, because I know a lot of people know my name just as youth ministry coordinator, but a little bit of my journey to get to that position was I did study at Benedictine College also, and went to go teach and get my master's in theology and Spanish education. And so I taught for 10 years before taking the call to head up the youth ministry program here. During that time, I worked mostly with middle and high school kids, and a lot with the theology of the body programs. I also helped to found campus ministry in various schools that I was at, and it's been really, really great getting to come home and getting to just invest in this community and just see all of the ways that God has been blessing St. Joe's. So I'm just thankful for these guys to be here tonight to help us to continue to grow all of that. So Joseph, will I receive these texts? Okay, great. So as they come in, I'll just start by fielding you guys the questions. Is it going through? Yeah, okay. All right, so we don't have any questions yet, but I think that it would be great to start just with, like, is there kind of a one thing golden nugget, like what Ashley said, that if they could take one thing home tonight, this would be the thing you want them to hear? So Ian, I'm gonna start with you if you're ready.
Gosh. Well, since you asked, I'm gonna just go ahead and read you a little letter that I wrote y'all. And it's short, I promise. But I've been thinking about this. Kelly told me that it was gonna be a Holy Spirit thing as to whether or not to share it. But yeah, so I'm just gonna read some notes that are important to me about parenting. Basically, there's just two ideas that I want to leave you with that are kind of big and have impacted me a lot this year. They're kind of just two big ideas, and they're not super deep, but they have impacted me a lot, and so I'm just going to share them with you. And the first is that parenting is a marathon. It's really a lifelong task that you've entered into. When your kids are little, a lot of your energy is physical, you're tired, you're extending that kind of physical energy, but when they start entering into adulthood, you're going to find a lot of mental, emotional, kind of taxing things that are starting to come into your life. It starts to get kind of really real. The other thing that I want to think about is that sometimes life gets messy. Sometimes things happen that are just really, really hard. And so this last year for me has been a marathon, and there's been some really kind of messy things that we've had to deal with, my husband and myself. So what kind of tools as parents do you want to have when you're running that marathon or you're hitting those messes? Last March, my husband Mike and I were contemplating what it was finally going to be like after 34 years to be empty nesters. Last spring, we were then planning 2 weddings. We had a high school graduation party, we had a college graduation party, and we had a 90th birthday party for my dad that I was planning in 3 months. And that was all happy and good. But life got messy. We became aware that my elderly parents who were living in a nice home in Taylor Meadows were being abused and taken advantage of by their next door neighbor. And this neighbor was cited twice for trespassing, once for vandalizing their property, was cited for disturbing the peace, and then finally had a protection order against him. But then the next day we saw him outside my dad's house videotaping my mom and dad while they were eating their meal. And so the police came and said, your parents really, this person could be dangerous, that you need to move them. So in 4 days' notice, the Hannigan Army moved Joe and Agnes out of their house and into my house at 1030 Aldrich Road, where they remain with me today. So this marathon. Additionally, in January, my dear 31-year-old daughter-in-law, Haley, was diagnosed with a chondrosarcoma, which is a bone cancer that originates in the cartilage cells. And we spent about 2 very long, scary weeks waiting until she could to Mayo Clinic to find out whether or not it had metastasized. Thankfully, it had not metastasized, but she was just able to have the tumor removed and is now in recovery from that cancer. But during that time, just in the last month, my husband and I have pretty much been keeping the grandkids quite a bit for days on end, and really cut it short because of a case of influenza on my part. So this first year of what was supposed to be my empty nest, my role as mother in many ways continued. And I think that I've done more mothering in the last year than in the previous 5. In this past month alone, I've buckled my grandkids into their car seats and at the same time buckling my parents into their seat belts. I put Band-Aids on my 4-year-old granddaughter's cuts and bandaged my mom's thin, fragile arms. I did loads of laundry that were filled with little tiny leggings, along with my dad's 60-year-old handkerchiefs that he's used his whole life, taken away things from the grandkids when they fight, taken away my father's car keys, caught my dad when he stumbled, and then caught my granddaughter's hand when we were crossing the street, said night prayers with the grandkids, while at the same time through the bedroom door could hear my mom and dad praying their nighttime rosary. So tonight I could offer a lot of insights about getting reluctant readers to read. I could talk to you about raising boys, about how to view your role as parents in a Catholic school system. I could talk to you about handling the issues of high school students who are seriously pushing boundaries, using alcohol, failing classes, about the experience of dealing with kids when they have a real crisis of faith. These are all things that I've gone through. But what I really want to leave, which would be the little nugget, which has been kind of a long nugget, but that this is a marathon you're running, and there will be some messes, but that you're not alone. You're not even close to being alone. That incredible love that you feel for your kids, that first time you held that newborn baby, that you never knew you could love anything as much as you love that baby. That as much as you love that baby, it's just a whisper of the amount of love that Jesus has for your kids and has for you. Your kids, know that your kids have been baptized into this faith, and as much as you care about them, Jesus cares about them infinitely more than you do. Lean into that and know that. Know that when it's all said and done and your kids are off into this great big beautiful world, that they'll have you. But truly, more important than having you, they're going to have Jesus, who wants them, he desires them, and he is ultimately going to be the one that's keeping them close. I have complete faith in that. It's really the thing that keeps me going. And it isn't easy. I currently have a child who's not practicing her faith, and we have really hard talks. But I have complete confidence that she knows what's right, she knows what's true, and I know that as much as I desperately want her back, I know that Jesus wants her back so much more than I do. So my little nugget is keep the faith, trust in your faith, and that's it.
Thank you, Ian. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Just that beautiful freedom to be a parent, knowing that Jesus has it. It's just, thank you for that. Yeah. Father, we'd love to hear what your little nugget is.
Sure. So, I mentioned the beauty of the church's vision for this propedeutic year. And it really, I mean, it's an incredible year. We have young people, and you know, our culture isn't doing any favors to us in terms of helping us to become gifts for others. There's a lot in the culture that tries to get us to think about ourselves and to find our happiness in material things and achievements, and the church recognizes this and says, but happiness and real purpose and meaning in life comes from becoming a gift to somebody else. You know, in the heart of Jesus Christ. If we can give ourselves away, then we find meaning. And it's really a lot of what John Paul II talked about in Theology of the Body, becoming that self-gift, which is what love is, right? We're able to look at somebody else and say, I want what's best for you. Even if I'm not getting anything out of this, I want what's best for you. Love is being a gift. And so there is this sequence that the church desires to lead these young guys through. And the first is just having an awareness, a self-awareness, which leads to a self-knowledge. That self-knowledge leads to a self-possession. In being able to possess ourselves, then we're able to become a gift for others, right? And so in that self-awareness, St. Ignatius talks about all of us are a mystery even to ourselves. Like, a lot of times we go through the day and we know we're stressed, but maybe we have a surface level grasp at what is stressing us out, right? Maybe we're going through the day and we're fearful, but we wouldn't put words to it. I'm fearful. We can be this mystery to ourselves, and all of these things, that are going on within us that prevent us from entering into real relationship with God and real relationship with others. And so the church wants to help these young guys to have this awareness. What is it that's going on within you? And then to have this growing knowledge, like, didn't realize this about myself, but I fall into fear a lot. And the fear is caused, like, I feel like I'm a failure. I think I'm going to mess everything up. And my mind needs to go into the future to think about all of these things, because what if this happens, and what if that happens, and what if, right? And we start to grow in this knowledge, okay, this is something that I struggle with. Or a person can have just this inner monologue, I'm failing at life. I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, I'm not worthy. And so to come to a knowledge, these are the things that are preventing me from being in relationship with God and others, which leads to a self-possession. We want to surround these guys with people they can confide in and have real conversations with, to be able to process what's going on and to have help in inviting Jesus into all of it. And so Jesus, honestly, I know you don't want me to be fearful. You say many times in Scripture, don't be afraid. But honestly, I have fear, and I invite you here with me. It's when we begin to have our identity rooted in how Jesus sees us, that he begins to free us, like, from the different fears and anxieties, frustrations, angers, discouragement, rejection, despair, right? Jesus begins to lift those things, saying it's not all on your shoulders. I desire to walk with you in this, right? With you always, and we encounter Jesus' perfect love for us. And as we experience his strength and his peace, his joy, then we can become a gift to others. And so the reason I bring this up is because I think it's helpful for all of us, to in our desire to really love others, right? In your desire to pour your love out for your kids, in becoming that self-gift. We're not going to be okay without Jesus. We're not going to be okay if he doesn't enter into all of it. And just from my vantage point and working with seminarians, the main thing that I wanted to say to you guys is just thank you. I get these guys who are incredibly respectful and faithful. I get guys who, are just each day wanting to really pour themselves into what we give them at St. Greg's, and that is in large part, due to the gift that their parents made to them. And I was just reflecting on this morning. We're going through a book in Catholic literature class, and Tuesday after daylight savings time, and the guys are just dragging. It's 8:30 in the morning. It was a rough morning, right? And so I just kind of mentioned to them, like, you guys, I don't know whether you're tired or you didn't do the reading, but conversation is good, right? Immediately after that, the whole like mood in the class changed because they wanted to jump in. And I was like, you know, after teaching high school for 15 years, I'm like, where am I? You know, it just, I get to work with amazing guys every day. And there's a psychologist friend of mine that says, you know, in order for a kid just to feel safe and grounded, be able to be receptive, you know, to Jesus' love and become that self-gift, their parents have to get it right 60% of the time. You know, so maybe that's a good thing to learn with you guys. But yeah, truly, thank you for the way that you're pouring into your kids. You wouldn't be here tonight if you didn't care about them and want to grow. And so, yeah, thank you.
You kind of stole a little bit of what I was going to say, so that's great. And I guess I already took a nugget, but I'll give another one. Okay, I can confirm 60%. Yes, that's true. I actually have heard lower, if that makes you feel any better. I have heard 40. And I think my heart goes to what do you do in the 60% that you do get it wrong? And I think the nugget that I want to give you is like pretty practical, and it is the importance of rupture and repair in relationship. That at the end of the day, you're gonna get it wrong. I mean, you already have your parents. Like, there's no way that you're gonna be perfect. And what I like to talk to parents about is the importance of being able to be aware of your own experience, to return to the places where you know you failed, right? You know you weren't everything that your kid needed in that moment. You know you didn't respond in the way that you wanted to. And to be humble and brave enough to return to your kid and to admit that and to ask for their forgiveness. I think if you can get that one skill, like literally out of all the other skills of being a parent, if you can master that one skill, your relationship with your kids will be fine. That creates such a safety in the relationship, but the other benefit that it has is it shows your kids that they can make mistakes too. You let them off the hook of that perfectionism or that control or that self-reliance that just tends to kind of sneak in there. And so rupture has to be a part of relationship because you're teaching your kids how to be human. And if you teach them the repair process, then they have the confidence to enter into pretty much anything, right? Because they have the freedom to know that even if I don't get it right, like it's gonna be okay because mom and dad didn't get it right and they made it okay. And so I feel like it's pretty practical, but ultimately that's the thing that I return to often as like the nugget that I'm talking about with parents. The gift of you being able to be aware of the ways that you have failed and to make a gift to your kids by being able to apologize. That will cover pretty much everything, I think. So the 40% that you get it right, awesome. The other 60, return to that.
Well, they pretty much said everything I was going to say. 40% will get you into the Hall of Fame in baseball. It's not a goal. Okay, so the nugget I would take is something I'm going to steal from a friend of mine who always says, well, the best thing for any person who's trying to grow in holiness is a reservoir. That a few minutes with a saint is greater than many hours with a lukewarm Christian. So becoming a reservoir of spirituality, of goodness, and faithfulness to your children, I think is the most important thing. If you're not making an attractive example of the Christian life, then why would your kids ever want to do it? No one wants to follow, I just heard someone recently say, nobody wants to follow the miserable disciple. Like, oh, there goes sad Mr. C, I don't want to be like him. Like, no one wants to do that. Everybody wants to follow a joy-filled, beautiful life, and that can be had, and I think is maybe specifically found in the life of the church. Because life is messy. Like you said, life is a terrible mess, and it happens to everyone, who have faith or not. And so we might as well have faith, because our Lord stumbled to the cross. We stumbled to his throne, I should say. We can follow him there. We can learn how to suffer well and do it happily in an attractive way, and our kids will find beauty in that. They'll find security and safety in that. Like, hey, if mom and dad can do it, so can I. You know. And also, if we're not giving an attractive example, then the attractiveness of the world has no competition. And as soon as they're in school, as soon as they meet all their peers who are not from a faith-filled family, they're going to be doing cool stuff that sounds really fun. and it is, but like it might not be good for them, right? So we need to follow Christ's example so that hopefully the children will follow ours to him. That'd be my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was such a diverse set of perspectives, so thank you. One of our questions that came in that I feel like you all kind of addressed was what advice do you have for parents who feel like they're failing? I feel like you showed most of us are failing, right? 40% is an abysmal grade, right? But we're still doing okay. And I guess the one thing that I would add that I've seen throughout the years and in my own family as well is just the reminder that your kids are not like a test score. They're not a direct reflection of your parenting. I've seen families who, to me, on the outside, look like they are doing everything right and have kids who struggle with really deep darkness. And it was not because they did something wrong. It was, God allowed a certain plan for their child, and I think we judge ourselves sometimes on, my kid struggles with alcohol, or my kid struggles with homosexuality, or all these big scary things that we look at that we don't want our kids to struggle with. And just a reminder that how they end up actually is not a direct reflection of how hard you tried, right? It's God's plan and He's in control, and the freedom that we have will invest in them and, steward our gifts of our children, but it doesn't mean you failed. If your kids struggle, they're going to struggle. So that would be my little nugget. Does anybody have any final thoughts on that question of advice for parents who feel like they are failing?
Is anybody in here a junior high parent? Okay, if you feel like you're failing, you might not be. They're just like that. Nobody wants to be judged by who they were in junior high. I mean, that is what I took with me in the classroom day one. Don't let your kid's terrible social behavior in junior high dictate your validation as a parent. And if you did mess up, it's not too late to turn it around, because they'll see that too. And even at a more formative stage, they might see you correcting your mistakes and be like, wow, I can turn it around too, even though I did that stupid thing. So
true. Thank you. Okay, we're going to kind of jump into a new topic, but I feel like it is more the practical side of how we become better parents. How would you recommend starting to pray with your family if you don't already have something regular in place?
So how do you instill a prayer life as a family? And really it was if you don't already have something in place.
Right.
Well, start, I would say. For sure, the easy things would be practical things, prayers before meals. I mean, that might be obvious, but just maybe start there with praying prayers before meals. And definitely nighttime prayers. I mean, how many of us raise your hand if you grew up every night praying the same prayers? Who was raised like every night you prayed the exact same prayers? And then ask yourself, am I doing that now with my kids? And so I think those kind of things. So just the obvious things are going to be the prayer before every meal, and then nighttime prayers, and that can be a really beautiful time as a family, a beautiful time, and a beautiful way to end the night. It's Lent right now, and so, we grew up every night praying a family rosary, and if that's too much, maybe just a decade of the rosary, but just setting aside time, it's probably just making that a habit, right? So just make a habit of it, start small. And the other thing that I would often say to my kids when they kind of are feeling away from the faith or whatever is just, there's something about the faith that appeals to you. There's going to be a prayer, there's going to be a saint, there's going to be something that appeals to you as a parent or appeals to your child. Maybe incorporate that into it. But just for the question of if you haven't already started, I think practically just start before every meal, say a morning offering, and nighttime prayers. And it's Lent. It's pretty awesome when you start praying the rosary every night during Lent. That's a beautiful thing. Except for I'll tell a story. One night when we were raising the kids and we would pray the rosary, these were when the kids are really little, and we had 6 boys and just 1 girl. And we were watching American Idol at the time when it was Chris Daugherty and Taylor Hicks and whoever the country star was. What was her name? Kelly Pickler. And we all had our favorite American Idol person, and Rose's favorite was Kelly Pickler. And we were praying the nightly rosary, and she was probably 8. She started, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord's with thee, blessed art thou." And then the boys were kind of giving her stink eye, and finally she said another, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord's with thee." And then they started to fight, and everybody was yelling, and finally I just said, "All right, just stop it. Everybody kneel up straight." Okay, and I'll start. The third joyful mystery, and so anyway, praying as a family is a great thing. So anyway, I would say just start.
My mind goes to my own dad, and he wasn't like a huge spontaneous prayer, but I remember he would get all of us kids together in the same room, and he would read to us. Not every night, but a lot of nights. And, he would have books about like Frederick Douglass or, Lord of the Rings. But there were also books about saints. So just introducing us, to stories of like people really living their faith. And we knew it was important to him because he was reading these stories to us. And, I always, knew that was something that I enjoyed, Dad, like being there and like praying in his own way, introducing these things to us. But I didn't realize, how deeply that went until there was my first 8-day silent retreat that I ever made. And, just kind of like wrestling with, does God really love me? And in that prayer, I was taken by the Lord, like to those memories of Dad reading to us, and introducing these stories of saints, and the Father showing me, that's his heart. My dad at the time had no idea that he was having that huge of an influence, right, on his kids by just being there and telling them, stories about the faith. God was present in that way. And so maybe that'd be kind of a fun way, of starting to pray. Reading stories of saints.
Okay, and just to let the panelists know, we have a ton of questions, so feel free to pass if you don't really have a lot to say about a certain thing, so we can kind of keep getting through. This next one has to do with spouses, with schedules, activities, and life going in so many directions. How do you propose that spouses can stay connected?
I've got a hot take.
Cancel activities. Just, if it's getting in the way of your marriage, cancel it. Like, that's what I would say. I know that's a hot take because, like, sports, but like, seriously, if you're getting run ragged as spouses, you don't have time for each other, the kids someday, might move on, and then you'll be stuck with that person, forever. So, just prioritize your spouse, and I think there's no better example to your kids than the loving relationship between husband and wife. Like, sometimes my kids will get real ambitious and be like, "Do you like mommy or us better?" I'm like, easy, that's mom. Like, 100% every time. So I would say cancel activities. Like, if they're getting in the way, cancel.
Great. Anybody else have something they want to add before we move on? And you have something? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
That's the only answer.
Okay, how about this one? How do you gradually introduce theology of the body to your children while they're young, and not waiting until it's too late, but also not being too graphic or too traumatizing? I can speak to this one. Okay, yeah. I would say, first of all, have no fear, because they are going to be constantly exposed to things. You beating the friends and the culture to the punch is not going to traumatize them. Also, I have found that as they are younger, they take facts a lot easier, and so if you very simply inform them of something that they might be coming up against, like with pornography or things like that, as younger kids, they kind of take it as like, huh, okay, and then they kind of move on. And so the more factual that you can be with your kids at a younger age, the easier it is to accept for them. There is a great book, and there's a lot of great resources out there, but this has been kind of my, if I had like a golden nugget type thing, right? Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, if you've heard of that book. I just want to reinforce that that is actually a great book to start all theology of the body, uncomfortable conversations that everybody's afraid of, because they do it in a really great way. You can do it with a junior high kid. It seems too cheesy. They still like it. But you can also do it with a 6-year-old. And my quick story with this book is I had a 7th grade boy who was telling me about the first time that he got exposed to pornography at a cousin's house. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, it was no big deal. Because, I mean, we read Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, so I knew exactly what to do. And it was really beautiful, because he felt empowered by his parents. And I asked him, I was like, were you afraid to tell your parents? He's like, no, because in Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, it tells me, that I should tell my parents. That's one of the steps, right? And because he received it at a really young age, it was just kind of a fact to him. And it never became this thing that haunted him. And he shared that story with a lot of his classmates and stuff, and kind of encouraged them to, hey, like, don't be afraid of this stuff. So that's my advice, is I would be less afraid of traumatizing your children than I would of having them have to experience these things outside the safety of your relationship. So, any caveats to that? Okay.
Yeah, just very quickly, I asked my seminarians, what do you wish or what did your parents do really well? And one of them said, my dad sat down with us with a book. He just called it the Orange Book. He didn't know what it was, but it was probably something like Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And he said, and my dad talked to us about this and said, if you ever have questions, I've been through this. Come and talk anytime. And he said that was a game changer for him.
It really breaks that shame cycle and that secrecy that a lot of these theology of the body topics can bring up, with children being afraid to go to their parents for things. So that would be my advice. So, okay. Next one would be, many kids today are suffering with chronic anxiety. Any thoughts or tips on how to talk with children and assure them they are loved and they are capable?
I might just turn this off. Did I? Okay. When I was 16, I had a job at Hy-Vee while I was working, and then I was like failing in class, and I was really stressed out because back then you could work a lot of hours as a teenager. And my dad told me, you're not going to work today. And that just stuck. I was super mad about it at the time, but it stuck with me that he was prioritizing the essentials instead of the extras, if that makes sense, because there really was just extras. So really it's the same advice before cancel activity. Show your kids you care more about their sleep and their eating habits and their spiritual life and the things that contribute to their health more than their social life. They're going to see those kids at school. They're going to see those kids around town. They don't have to go to that game. You know what I mean? That's my own students' experiences. They're too busy. That's the source of their anxiety.
Yeah, and just speaking into anxiety a little bit, anxiety is the emotion we feel when we feel like we don't have control, right? And so if a kid feels like I need to have control of everything, the cure for that is to realize that Jesus is right there with them and desires to enter in, that Jesus is going to care for them, that he's bigger than any evil they will ever experience. And if somebody has that realization, God is here, he cares about me, he can take care of it, he's bigger than the evil, then the anxiety can tend to lift. And one way of helping like a kid with this is when they are getting pulled by anxiety, just to have them for a moment shift their thoughts and just to ask, what are the good things that are going on right now in your life? What are the things that are causing joy? You know, what are the things that you love? And to have them talk about that, and then to give them a realization that is Jesus with you. Like Jesus won that for you from his cross. He's always thinking about you. He's the source of every good thing that you'll ever have. That's Jesus, right? And look how he's always with you. And let's say a prayer and just tell Jesus thank you for all of this good that's in your life. And just that shift onto him and that shift to gratitude can often cause the anxiety to lift.
Thank you, Father. I will say, just working in this parish, it's true that anxiety is on the rise. I've never seen more kids stressed out about their prayer life before. That was a new experience for me, like kids to even be anxious about faith, and everything you said is exactly like helping them understand they don't have to be in control all the time, that Jesus is the one in control. There are a lot of questions about smartphones. So I'm going to kind of try to summarize all of the questions, and I would say most of them have to do with how can we unite our community to be on the same page with smartphones. Most of the questions indicate that the families do not plan to have smartphones for their children, and they just wonder if you have advice for how can you help a parish family get on board with that.
How many in here plan to not give your kid a smartphone until like, driving, 16 years old? Right, so just take a look at the hands. Go ahead and lift them just for a moment longer. Take a look at the hands, right? There are a lot of parents on that page, a lot of them, right? And you're not alone in doing that. In the MHSF, the Missionaries of the Holy Spirit, the family couples, across the board, right? This is their desire, I think, just to know you're not on an island. And there are many, many who are on that same page. And I, again, ask the seminarians, like, what did your parents do that was most instrumental? And the most common response from them was they didn't let us have smartphones until we needed them. And that was their biggest, I said, what would you offer to parents? And they said, don't give your kids smartphones until they truly need them.
The thing that I was thinking, it's come up a few times in the questions, and I think the thing that is really important about it is, you guys know this, your kids will do what they see modeled. So when it comes to anxiety, or when it comes to using their smartphones, or even when it comes to talking about theology of the body, if you have the awareness of your own relationship with those things, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? You can model what you desire them to be doing, right? Whether you end up giving them a smartphone or not, I'm kind of like, okay, it doesn't make you a good or a bad parent or all those kinds of things. I know everyone in the room didn't raise their hand, so don't feel bad if you didn't raise your hand. Because ultimately, the example that you set for them about the way that you engage with your smartphone, or how you respond to anxiety, will be what they actually learn and what they see modeled and what they repeat. And so I think all these suggestions, I'm totally on board with that. There's a lot of research about it developmentally being just difficult for young brains to engage with smartphones. But at the end of the day, you as a parent, knowing yourself, having that self-awareness, and really being open to growing in your relationship with these things will model for your kids what you desire for them. yeah, you can't really give what you don't have, which is a really hard lesson because as a parent, you're confronted with that all the time. But I do think that there's something beautiful about the Lord bringing you to those opportunities to continue to grow. Like your kids are especially designed to bring out all of those places in you. And it's an opportunity for you to be aware of your own relationship with those things and to have the freedom to model that well for them.
Okay, thank you so much. I think something that has come to mind with a lot of these themes to me as well is to always ask ourselves, are we parenting out of fear or are we parenting out of grace and courage and joy? And the smartphones discussion can become a very fearful discussion, I think, of doing the right thing, but also fear of being left out. And one of my favorite stories about smartphones was with a group of 7th graders. They all had smartphones except one. And he was starting to feel like he was just like this naive, left out kid. And his whole class rallied around him and told him that they were jealous of him. And I was just amazed. And they explained, we're jealous of everything you have been left out of. And they listed, you know, the drama, the inappropriate images, the late night trying to talk a kid out of hurting themselves, all of these things that he had been left out of, and they were just expressing that they were so jealous. So that was just a good example of like, don't be afraid. If you're not feeling, you know, like your kid needs a smartphone and you're afraid they're gonna be left out, don't parent out of that place of fear, parent out of a place of courage. But same thing, if you're feeling like you have a call to teach them how to use it, or you know, some alternative thing that a lot of people don't agree with, you and your husband know what's best for your kids. Not everybody else knows what's best for your kids. So, okay, this is a great one. We live in an age of gentle parenting, which is good and bad. How do you discipline well and not apologize for it, but also apologize when needed? Basically, how do you discipline well? Great question.
I'm not going to talk about the discipline part, but I think this is a helpful like foundational piece when it comes to thinking about rupture and repair, but also what happens when you're disciplining. There's a difference between like natural rupture in a relationship and what we would maybe call like a toxic rupture. So a toxic rupture would be something that like comes out of a lack of freedom on your part, right? But there are actually like normal ruptures that happen when you set boundaries for kids, which is a lot of what discipline is. And I'm not gonna sit here and say you have to do this way or the another way or whatever, But I will say that like, again, rupture is a part of building a relationship and holding boundaries and helping your children learn how to hold boundaries. There will be ruptures from that. I think that's a piece that maybe the gentle parenting sometimes kind of misses, that it's not actually about trying to make your kids feel good all the time. It's about helping them learn how breaks in relationship can be repaired and brought back together. And so, I don't know, I think that's a helpful framework to like start from when you think about gentle parenting or apologizing or all those kinds of things that, again, sometimes there are ruptures that are just a result of setting natural boundaries or consequences that need to happen. And sometimes there are ruptures that occur because of a mistake or a failure on your part. It's hard to discern the difference, but just knowing and accepting that that's going to be part of the discipline process, no matter what form of discipline you decide on or what works for your family. I think that's a helpful, like, kind of underlying thing to start from. So, yeah, I don't know.
My thoughts go to Jesus, right? And Jesus being the model for us of what it looks like for humanity, you know, to be fully alive and in love. And with Jesus, like, he always loved, right? He's infinite love. But Jesus is also infinite truth. And so there were times where Jesus spoke truth that, you know, people didn't receive well. Somebody said once that love without truth is enabling. Truth without love is violence. And so I think just for all of us, right, as a priest too, like, you know, I have to speak truth sometimes when it's not received by people if I want to be a good priest, right? But that always has to come from a place of love. I think that's what all of us are praying for. Like, Lord, please help me to find that balance, right, of truth and love.
Thank you. Oh yeah, you want to add to it?
I'm in the thick of it.
A long time ago, I worked at Boys Town as a family teacher, and one thing I learned there that I carried into parenting with my own little kids, all 10 and under, is keep your tolerances low. Like, put out small fires, and you won't have as many big fires to deal with when it comes to discipline. So instead of having to worry about, you know, so-and-so talked back, it's like, well, we've been working on voice tone when you're talking to an adult for a long time, so the chances they're going to talk back are much smaller because they're already paying attention to, like, what tone of voice am I going to talk to this adult in, so that I'm not disrespectful. So that's one piece. And the other piece I would say is don't be afraid to teach your kids that fourth commandment, honor your father and mother. Like, they need to learn that. And it's not like something personal from you. I'm not mad at you because you're being a smart aleck to me. I think it's funny, but you have to learn this trait, this skill, this commandment, this habit, this virtue, really. Like, so discipline is not optional as parents. It's something we have to instill in our kids because their virtue, their eternal salvation could depend upon that. Like, that's the fourth commandment. It's a pretty big deal. So teaching them to respect father and mother, and that extends to teachers, doctors, bosses, employers, etc., etc. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Father, this one was directed to you. How do you raise children to be open to a vocation to priesthood or religious life?
Yeah, I asked my guys, I mentioned, what would you really want to help parents to know that was most helpful for you? And they mentioned when they saw their parents living the faith. That's, you know, when they developed an excitement for the faith. So one of the guys talked about, yeah, you know, my parents would bring us to confession, and we would go as a family, you know, and I saw my parents walk through the doors of the confessional, and I knew that was important, you know, and he saw his mom and dad get excited, like, about holy days, you know, and it wasn't just something he saw that they had to do, but they really got fired up, you know, like, we get to go to these holy days of the church. And, you know, so for them, they said just watching their parents model the faith was the biggest thing that influenced their vocations. And just on a personal note, I remember my mom once, my sister was at a football game and her contact lens blew out of her eye. And this was a big deal, like, for our family at the time, back in the days of hard contact lenses and, like, you know, raising 6 kids on an art teacher salary, and, right, this is a big deal. So the next day, my mom had all of us go to the football field. She was sitting on the bleachers, right? And if you've seen underneath the bleachers, small town football, right? It was just like candy wrappers and popcorn, and right, and we're looking for a contact lens and all of this. And, like, you know, us as kids were grumbling, this is the stupidest thing ever, you know. And so we didn't find it, right? We went home. And so Sunday now rolls around, and we were just at Mass, and my mom said, I was praying at Mass, we're going back. You gotta be kidding me, right? So my brothers and I bring a football, right? And yeah, she's trying to get us to look for this contact lens. Well, she ends up going into a different part of the football field, right? And she's praying. And probably 50 yards from the bleachers, at the north goalpost, as she's looking there, she sees something catch the sun. She goes down and she finds this contact lens, right? And, you know, for me as a kid, like, seeing that faith in my mom, like, it's something that, you know, I have never forgotten. Like, you know, it's still emotional to me. So I think, you know, the guys are right. Like, you know, just seeing that faith is huge for a vocation.
Thank you, Father. Okay, the next one, what is the single biggest impediment you've seen get in the way of our kids being able to pursue God? This one might take a second to think about.
I think the problems over the last 8 years have changed with students that I've encountered now. Today, it's apathy, like 100%. They just don't care. You can tell them this will like literally save the planet. They're like, it's fine. They're not interested. They don't want to take part of it. And I think a lot of that goes back to like the theme of the whole night is, you know, you're giving the kids what you have. Your example is going to be what's key. And so if we're not, as parents, taking our faith seriously, if we're not making it the priority, if we're not looking for the contact lens after math, you know, if that's not the thing that we're doing, then why would they be bothered to care about it? You know, if sports is on the altar for me, why would I expect anything else for my children? Our children are going to be like us, and that means our bad things too. Like, they're our most attentive audience. We don't get to hide things from them in the same way that maybe we do when we're out amongst our work chums or our friends or whatever. They're going to see me lose my temper. They're going to see me when I'm at my worst. They're going to see how I do sickness, and it's not good, right? They're going to see all these things. And so when suffering comes their way, when they look at the problems of the world, and it's like, it's too overwhelming. If I'm being overwhelmed, and if I'm not remembering, wait a second, Jesus said, in the world you will have troubles, but I have overcome the world. Like, if I'm not living that out, why would I expect my children to? Like, they can smell stress and fear. Like, that's a human thing. So if I'm always stressed out, if I'm always afraid, why would I expect them to? And if it's too overwhelming for me, the 13-year-old's not going to handle it. So I think the poor example of adults is the biggest impediment to our children taking their faith seriously. And we can point our finger at society, we can point it at the world and the media and everything else, but we're a part of that. Like, we made that. That's us. That's our generation. Like, we can step up and fix it. We have their attention. We just need to give them a good example. So I think the apathy. Yeah.
Anybody else have a burning desire to answer that one? Yeah.
I guess this is something that's on my heart a lot right now. You know, what pulls kids away from faith? And I kind of thought a little bit about when Father was first talking about his comments about, a lot of it went over my head, to be honest, at the beginning, but when you're talking about the different steps of getting kids to really get to a point where they can be a gift to somebody else. And what I see is my kids that have struggled in that is that they are living for themselves. They really are very inward focused. Currently, my daughter that's really struggling, well, I'm struggling, but she's not struggling. But everything is, you know, she's in New York City and it's all about her job and it's not about other people. And she graduated during COVID from college, and I kept saying that summer, you need to go and do something for other people. You need to go volunteer somewhere. You need to stop, you know, just only worrying about your future, but you're gonna feel better if you start living for other people. And so I just really see kind of if we can help kids to be less kind of focused on self and more focused on others and start to see how good that feels and what that does, that maybe that's part of the answer.
Thank you. I really struggle with this question because of how powerful God is and how able He is to work with our failures. And yeah, again, just knowing that we can do it all right and there can be impediments that come along the way, but God's bigger than all of those impediments. Yeah. Okay, so this is our final question because we are at time. I'm going to give you two options. The first one is, how do we as parents let go to a healthy degree? Or you can answer, do you have any suggestions for remaining joyful in the mess? These can kind of be your closing remarks here.
I love that idea, of remaining joyful in the mess. I think it's not taking yourself too seriously, recognizing that, really lean into the fact that Jesus, he's got this. And just, instead of being fearful about it, just truly be so joyful about what our faith is. And if you really feel that, I think that it comes a little bit more naturally, but that's a great image, remaining joyful in the mess. That's beautiful.
I come back again and again in my own life to the power of gratitude. And gratitude can be like a light switch that's flipped on. We're, kind of like weighed down by all of the trials of life. And if we can take just a moment to be grateful and find Jesus in that gratitude, then we can bring to him all the stuff that we're going through. And it doesn't mean we have to be grateful all the time, right? But literally, if I time it, so the world is crashing down, there's all these storms, there's all of these fires to put out, and if I can literally look at my watch and for 1 minute, I'm just going to switch my thoughts, and I'm going to focus on something that is going well, right? And Jesus, you're here, and I'm grateful for you. Right? Jesus made us 2 promises. In this life, there will be troubles. In this life, there will be the storms and the evil. There's just a reality that we're living in. But he said the other promise is, I promise you, I will be with you in the midst of all of it. I promise you. Right? And I have found, just shifting to gratitude in the midst of the storms. Jesus, I remember you're here with me. And Jesus, I bring to you these struggles and these storms. Please, how do you see this storm? How do you see me? And so, maybe for Lent, starting a gratitude journal and just each day writing 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for, and then time yourself 1 minute, just be with Jesus. Thank you. I remember how close you were.
That's beautiful. I was also thinking of a minute thing, but the thing that came up was really being able to see your kids. Really look at them. The play therapist that we have on staff talks about the beauty of being able to give that presence to your kids. And she says, all kids kind of really need in order to really be filled up by that and be okay is 1 minute every day or 30 minutes of totally undivided time, 1 time a week. And I think the thing that is really standing out to me about that is if you really look at your kids in a way that you can see them, all the beautiful things that make them them, you have more freedom to be able to delight in them. And I think that eases the burden of parenting. That you're all those things are still true, they're still really hard, it makes me really anxious, I'm still really afraid, but this person in front of me is so beautiful. This person is so awesome. I feel for both of those questions, if you can do whatever you can to really look at your kids individually, one by one, look them in the eye and understand the reality of who they are, I think that will shift a lot of that burden. That's I think the joy that we're talking about. It doesn't mean that you're going to feel awesome all the time, but you're going to parent out of a place of love because you know exactly what it's worth because they're right in front of you.
The 2 questions I think are kind of related, how do you let go and how do you stay joyful in the mess? And my mind goes to a hodgepodge of places because are you talking about letting go of children, letting them make their own decisions? Because if that's the case, I would say just include them in the responsibility to the family. I think every newborn should come with a 10-year-old girl because letting her help out with the family has matured her to a point where now I start trusting her with other stuff. So I think just incrementally, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to take care of this, and it just grows. It just grows, and then the younger kids look up to that and they see that example. If you're talking about letting go in a forgiveness sense, I think just as important as gratitude is, forgiveness is. And so practicing forgiveness, practicing in your prayer life, the surrender, the prayer of surrender to our Lord. If it comes to letting go of grudges against your kids, just remember they're not no offense. I am a parent. They're not very smart. Like kids are not. Kids are just, they're learning, you know? So if they do something really stupid, they didn't mean to. Like they're learning. They're little, so. But I think that also helps with maintaining the joy in the mess. Because if you can look at your kid who just destroyed your priceless whatever and be like, man, you're dumb, and it's kind of funny then. You know, it's like now it's kind of funny. And now you've surrendered, you've let go of your attachment to the thing in favor of another layer of joy in your child. Even though they're grounded. You know, like those things can coexist. And I think that actually makes the picture more beautiful. And lastly, I would say, from a more like philosophical point, like the virtuous life is the happy life. So finding joy in the mess is going to look like, again, returning to be a reservoir for your children. Develop your own virtue. Invite God into your life to help you develop virtue, and you will find joy no matter what comes. So I think that's what
Okay, first of all, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm struck by, we all feel very humbled to be giving any of this advice, right? Because as I look out at all of you, there are so many of you that I would be coming begging you for your advice. So thank you for being here tonight. I encourage you all to continue these conversations among each other and get each other's perspectives too. And then thank you to our panelists for taking your time to come and share your humble wisdom with all of us tonight. So if we can give them a round of applause. That was really great. Thank you so much.
Just a quick reminder,